Yo, guys, it's Kyle coming at you from Bane's Film Reviews. Today, I'm sitting down with Joe Cox, the writer, director, producer, and editor of 0%, a fantastic short thriller that deals with isolation and emotional abuse and so many incredible things that really makes you think. And I'm so fortunate to sit down with Joe today and chat about his film. Thank you so much. How are we doing?
I'm doing good. I really appreciate you having me on. Anytime you direct a short film or make anything independently and someone enjoys it, it feels like a victory.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to be here and be welcomed.
Yeah, well, I imagine that process is daunting, making something that you're very passionate about, and then you have to put it out there for everyone else to judge, and you kind of don't know which way it's going to go. Um,
Yeah, that's it is incredibly daunting. That I think most creators are their own worst critics for sure.
mhm.
I would say so. Contextually, 0% was made for a competition called Winter Film in
Okay.
Cincinnati, and we get like 30 days to create a film based on one theme. And this year, the theme was a percentage, so we had to go with that and build off of that. So it was made with the idea of competing against other filmmakers who were using that same theme. But once you actually complete it, it's that you've got to like kind of a wild ride of waiting for people to watch it, and you kind of cringe the entire time waiting to see if okay, are they going to be silent at the right parts? Did this line actually sound sinister, or does it sound laughable? So honestly, like I'll kid you not, I have many panic attacks while I'm sitting there watching a film I've directed in front of an audience. I actually will go to the back and I'll just watch the audience, not the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I can't even imagine. I mean, I teach, and every once in a while, I put together a lesson plan that I think is fantastic, and it more times than not, it bombs when it comes to the kids. As long as they're getting something from it, I guess I'm happy. But I never get the excited reaction that I'm hoping for. Now, yours is on a much different scale. I mean, you're pouring your heart and soul into this, and I hope that you got really good reactions because I love the film. So I imagine that the reactions were positive.
I would say yours has higher stakes. Educating our future generations is far more important than whether or not somebody likes my film. Uh, but yeah, we had a pretty good reaction. I think the crowd at Winter Film liked it. It ended up taking away 4 awards
Wow,
at the event. Brandi Botkin, who was our star, won for Best Leading Actress. Our
nice.
sound designer Noah took away a trophy. What else did our hair and makeup artist won for it,
Wow,
and our wardrobe department won for the
that's
costuming.
fantastic. That's
It was a
fantastic.
lot of
All well
fun.
deserved. All well
Yeah,
deserved.
they're all phenomenal, and I want to highlight too. I might be the one here talking, but like it is always a team effort. Filmmaking is a team sport. I always joke all the time with everybody. I'm like, it's a sport. It's like it's a team thing. All of them are the reason we can do this. I wouldn't be anything without them. They all make me look like a much better director with a much better vision than I actually have. Because they're all really good. I cannot hear you. No.
All right. What about now?
Yes.
All
Now I
right,
can.
perfect. I've
Is
been
is
having issues
audio
with the
okay on my side?
AirPods. And
Is the audio okay coming from my AirPods?
yeah, you're great.
Okay.
My AirPods have been weird lately, so I'm gonna revert back to the wired headphones and go from
Sure.
there. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, so I want to take a step back real fast because I'm just curious how you
Sure.
got into filmmaking in the first place.
Yeah, so I actually, funny enough, I was homeschooled in high school, so I had a lot of spare time. I really enjoyed being homeschooled. That's not even a criticism. I would get all my schoolwork done in like 3 or 4 hours, and I would have so much extra time during the day. So I started writing scripts, and I got a hold of a video camera for my birthday. It was like $100. It was the
Mhm.
cheapest thing ever. And then I'd write scripts during the day, and in the afternoon, my friends would come home from school, and we would all film them. And
Wow.
then I would cut it together, and the next day we'd all laugh and watch it. It was the stuff that we thought was the funniest things in the world, and
Yeah.
it would have like 10 views on YouTube, and nobody cared. And the few people who would stumble upon it would be like, "Yeah, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen," but it was what made me want to keep making stuff. Is I
Mm.
just loved the outlet of creating. So I had a friend that kind of kicked me into gear because I was deciding whether or not I wanted to go to school for film or if I wanted to
Mhm.
go into like IT. My parents were like, "Well, Joe, there's no money in film. There's no jobs to be had." And another friend of mine was like, "Joe, let me ask you this: when you're 40, are you and you're an IT guy, are you going to sit there and ask yourself, what if, and drive everybody nuts while you're miserable? Or are you going to give it a shot, and then in a few years, if it doesn't work, you can do something else?"
Mhm.
So I took that advice and I went on to film school and I got started and I went to a 2-year program at Cincinnati State and then I ended up making money right out of school. So I
Wow.
kept doing it. I mostly work in like weddings and commercials and stuff like that, but I try to
Mhm.
do narrative stuff on the side, like 0%, and then hopefully could get some features in coming
Very
up. It's
nice.
just hard getting that funding off the ground, you know?
Yeah. Well, that was good advice, I would say. Making some money and you're enjoying what you're doing. So
Yeah, it's honestly a blessing to be able to make a living doing the thing I love.
yeah, absolutely. And then so I'm curious. I know that you said this is part of a competition, but where did this idea come from for 0%?
So part of it is that I just have dark, twisted thoughts in the background of my mind. I'm a pretty bright and cheery guy, but I guess you could probably, if you listen to my playlist, it's all like emo music from the 2000s. Um, but honestly, it comes from just the way I view humanity, and that I view humanity as, yeah, there are some good things, but I think at its core, I believe that humans have a sinful nature, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that comes from my religious background. I'm an evangelical Christian, um, and I view humanity as something that needs to be saved, in that nobody, not even pastors, are beyond evil.
Hmm.
And so when I was writing this, the only vision I had when I was coming up with the competition stuff was the idea of a woman having to overcome everything,
Yeah.
and take just the slightest bit of courage to, make one move to try to escape. All it takes is one little eensy bit of chance,
Hmm.
right? And that's where the theme of 0% came in. Was if he's telling her every day that there's a 0% chance she's getting out of there, the line that came to me that really kind of pushed the whole narrative forward was, "It's only 0% if I don't try."
Yeah.
And I like going with that, and there's a lot of cool little nuggets in there too on how I built up Eden, the character in general, and
Hmm.
I try to see. So I'm a father of 2 girls, and
Okay.
I try to see a lot of who I want my girls to grow up to be and what I want them to view um, as strength, right?
Hmm.
And when I was directing Brandi, I told her, I said, "I want you to view this as strength under control. You're a person that has great strength, you just don't know it yet, and
Hmm.
it's all contained within you." I said, "And I want you to play it like that. I want you to play it like you've got the strength underneath and you're just waiting for the gumption to make a move."
Yeah.
And in that, I saw Eden a lot, and how I view my daughters and how much I love them and how I would be absolutely devastated if anything happened to them. So it was easy for
Hmm.
me to make Eden sympathetic.
Yeah.
Um, and coming from a evangelical background, it was easy for me to look at a villain like the pastor
Yeah.
in this and say, "Hey, I see flaws even in people that are in my subculture," right? So I don't know if that was a bit of a tangent or a rant,
No,
but
no, that's great.
uh, it's kind of where the basis came from. And then the other big visual I had was her talking to a stuffed pig.
Okay.
Yeah, like when I was building around it, I was like, if someone is in isolation, who can they converse with besides their antagonist? But we need somebody who has a relief, in there to give the audience a
Yeah.
relief from the tension, but also so that we can develop her character a little bit in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
And that's when I brought in the pig, which is a reference to my eldest daughter, who is 3. She carries a stuffed pig with her everywhere she goes.
Okay.
It is her favorite thing in the world, and she talks to the pig. The pig has a name, all that. And so I added the pig into the script. And the funniest part of that whole process was Brandi comes to me and she's like, Joe, why did you choose a pig? And I was like, well, and I told her about my daughter Naomi, and she's like, well, it's funny because my stuffed animal as a kid was a pig that I
Wow.
carried everywhere. And she was like, that pig is still in my room today. Like, she was like, I love that pig. She's like, she's like, I love that you chose a pig. And I thought it added to the whole. Brandi was meant to be in this part. I
Yeah.
wrote the part for Brandi. I called Brandi up. I said, are you still willing to be on my winter film team? And she was like, of course. I said, okay, I'm
Mm.
going to build a script around you. And we had the base of the story done in one night.
Okay.
So because we had 30 days to get it all done. So I was
Wow.
like, let's get our idea down. I had a loose script that was kind of messy and all over the place,
Mm.
and took a couple days to revise it. Um, and then the other casting choice was immediately I called up Chris Dettone, who plays the pastor, and I
Hmm.
said, Chris, don't take this the wrong way, but I need someone who can play this horribly evil, weaselly sexual assault person. I was like, I said, I know that you're capable of doing it. Don't take that the wrong way. I just know you're a good enough actor to do it. Um, so the casting was just insanely easy
Yeah.
on that part.
It's interesting that you were able, so they always say, write about what you know. And it's interesting the way you were able to weave things in and out of the narrative the way that you did. Because I mean, right down to the main character's name, Eden. And I was curious, why choose that? It plays a role in the narrative for sure, but then it touches on your background and it allows you to connect with it in a different way and develop it in a much stronger way than I think you would have been able to if it was something very foreign to you. And I think it comes through very well that you have a deep connection to this. So, and that's a good thing for sure.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And even just going off of Eden, I'm sorry, I don't want to go on a
No,
tangent,
go
but
ahead.
just the idea when I was selecting her name, it was always because number one, the contrast of sin in the Bible versus
Hmm.
sin in the situation, but
Yeah.
also that a rapist. Can I say that on the
Yeah,
podcast,
you
or
can
does
say
that need
what
to be believed or whatever?
you can
Okay.
say whatever you want on here. I don't care.
I don't know. I don't want to get you demonetized or whatever
No, no,
or anything like that. But I can't believe I'm smiling while saying rapist. Now I see. Now I'm terrible.
no.
When we're dealing with a rapist too, like his paradise would be a woman that he has under control.
Okay.
That was the other reason I chose that, and I also refrained from naming the pastor anything but the pastor because I felt like it was much more intimidating to number one not have a name. He's just
Hmm.
the pastor. He's an authority figure,
Yeah.
but also to kind of make him more of a boogeyman,
Yeah.
and dehumanize him and show that he
Yeah.
is, the evil um, the kind of evil we're trying to avoid.
Right.
But
Right.
I do want to ask you, because since you watched it, and I appreciate your very, very kind review.
Of course.
Um, how did you interpret the ending? Because there are so many conversations I've had over the last 6 months of it, or 5 months, I guess,
Mm.
about the ending, and everybody has different interpretations. So I'm curious how you interpreted the ending.
So walk me through it one more time. It's been a couple weeks since I watched, so walk me through the ending briefly.
Sure. So when she gets up from the basement, she
Hmm.
finds a woman in the room with a baby crying, and the woman's
Right.
clearly in
Right. Right.
shock.
Right. Right. Right.
And she scoops up the baby when she realizes the woman's beyond saving,
Hmm.
and walks into the light. And the walking into the light is because this whole movie he's been gaslighting her about,
Yeah.
the end of the world, and she doesn't believe that the world is actually ending.
So I like that, and so I compared that a little bit to the new M. Night Shyamalan film. Um, I can't remember. Knock at the Cabin, where this whole
Mm-hmm.
time you're trying to figure out are they full of shit or are they legit? Are they really telling you the truth? And I think you have no choice but to question that. You know that he's crazy, but is there some validity to what he's saying throughout the course of the film? And when you see her go into the light, you almost contribute that or you parallel that with death. And I think whether this is exactly the way you were going for it or not, I interpreted that as he was telling the truth. In his twisted mind, he actually believed that he was saving her life. And now she is tasked with something equally daunting, maybe even more daunting than being trapped in a place where someone is, while they're going to abuse you, you'll remain alive. You're now left to your own devices, now with a child, and it's you against the world. And I like that you kind of, it's not just a crazy person that's locked someone up. It's not just this person that is out of his mind and there's no validity to anything that he's saying. You get to see that while he is crazy, he's truthful. And I like that juxtaposition in that character because that adds so much depth to him when she steps out into the light.
Yeah. And you pretty much nailed it. I tried to leave a lot of breadcrumbs for other options because I like to avoid spoon feeding the audience
Yes.
exactly what I want them to think. I like to give them things to think about and
Yeah.
decide what it means for them in the end. But that's pretty much the direction I was headed,
Okay.
which was the idea that he was telling the truth. He's just evil.
Yeah.
He's just twisted in and of himself, and that he's still misguided and believes that he's going to be brought up to heaven and during after the tribulation and all of this. And in reality, no, he's not. He's the exact type of person that's going to be judged heavily on Judgment Day.
Yes.
And so I love the idea of bringing in super high stakes in a very, very small way. That's so subtle that you're like, okay, is that where he's going? Because I think sometimes in short films it's impossible to get the scale that you want. So
Yeah.
you have to make the stakes feel real on a personal level and the scale to feel like a small background factor. And I think that's what works with 0%. And I think some people don't quite get there because there are some people who are like, I don't know that I get it. And I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of, there's a lot of stuff to unpack in there. But yeah, I think you're kind of on the right track as far as
Okay.
where I was heading with it. I've had a lot of people ask me like, well, did she die? Or,
Right.
Or is the light just metaphorically, she's leaving this and killing this version of herself and is raising into something else.
Okay.
But and a lot of people have asked me why does she take the baby? Why does she need that? And I think I tell them, I'm like, there's a lot of reasons she takes the baby. Number one, I was like, because we're showing the comparison between her and the pastor in the kind of grace and I guess empathy for another being that she has that and he doesn't. But also just kind of the idea of she can save this baby from having the same kind of outcome of life that she just went through,
Exactly.
So I think, and also the baby just is vulnerability. I mean, anytime you're dealing with a baby, which that baby is played by my sister's daughter and my niece, I won't say her name. She asked to not be credited because she was like, I don't want her name out there and stuff like that. Sure. But one of my beautiful little nieces played the baby, and she did a fantastic job screaming bloody murder. It did not take very long to get some crying shots.
Yeah.
The other fun part was that baby was never on set.
Yeah.
So we shot that in my parents' living room, just close-ups, and then everything on set was a fake baby.
Interesting.
So no babies were harmed in the making of 0%. They definitely cried, but no babies were harmed.
Good to know. And then so there's a lot of things that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on, but I want to I want to talk about the set, because you choose a set. This film doesn't work if you don't choose the right set. You can't just film this anywhere and make do with what you have. You have to find the right space for this, because that space creates isolation and claustrophobia and everything that's essential to this film being successful. So what was that process like, finding the right space? And then I mean, you don't necessarily know what the entire space looks like. You just know what you're shown on camera. So how do
Mhm.
you develop that sense of isolation and claustrophobia and separation from civilization?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the answer is not going to be as exciting as I think you guys are you're gonna want it to be. Uh, it really we lucked into that set
Okay.
hardcore. So when we started the production, like the pre-production process, when I sent the script over to my co-producer Erica, we set out like looking for basements. We were calling everybody
Mhm.
we knew. We're like, okay, we got to find a dingy basement. We were looking for like maybe even wood paneling or things. We're like, because this story is supposed to be vaguely set in the 70s
Okay.
with the costume design, but we also wanted it to be like you never know exactly when it is. You just
Right.
feel like it might be. So we were looking at a bunch of different basements. We had one scheduled that we were going to shoot down in Cincinnati, and we had it lined up. And it was funny. I was going through something with my assistant director,
Mm.
Jesse Brown. He's from Dayton, Ohio, and I was chatting with him, and he was like, "Joe, why don't you take a look at my basement?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I live in a house that was built in the 1800s, and it's like a stone basement, and it looks like a dungeon." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Yeah, it's kind of cramped, but like," he's like, if we shoot it just right, he's like, "It might work." So I just drove over to his house, and I was like, "Let's take a look at this thing." And oh my goodness, like the cobwebs were natural. Like it was just, I walked in and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna get trapped down here. So we looked at, I was like, this is the perfect space, but it was like empty. So
Yeah.
we called up my set designer, Christina Lambert. She is phenomenal. She just the one that did wardrobe and set design.
Mm.
And funny enough, she did not win for set design at Winter Film, um, which is, I mean, it's fine. Like it's a competition and
Right.
it is what it is. But she's just one of the best in the business. She works on a bunch of the Hollywood movies that come into town.
Wow.
And she was like, okay, so she's like, you want this to feel like a lived-in dungeon? How long has she been here? I said several weeks. I said stains, whatever. And she comes in. She had built a makeshift mattress and like had we had the nastiest looking pea jar you've ever seen, and like
Uh-huh.
she comes in and just sets all this stuff in there, and then when I was talking to my director of photography, because the director of photography and the lighting is a huge portion of what we were trying to do to create this look and this space to make it feel both like a dungeon, someone's basement, but also like otherworldly because of the
Mm.
implications of it being potentially the end of the world. So when I called Matthew Kennedy is my director of photography, and I said, Matt, what I'm thinking, I said, I want sourced lighting from the windows. I said, I want it to feel like no matter what time of day, there's just harsh light coming from the window.
Okay.
I was like you can never tell what time of day it is. And
Mm.
he's like, what time of day is it? I said, that's the point. We don't know. I was like, I just eternally bright light coming from the window, almost like the end of the world is outside.
Okay.
So she doesn't know for sure, right? She can hear the sound of birds chirping and things like that in the distance, but she doesn't know. And so literally us just shooting beams of light through the window and using fills on the other side to kind of shape the light worked beautifully to make that set work because it
Yeah.
was cramped. I mean, so I'm 6'4" and I was bumping my head on the ceiling every other, like I was like crouching underneath things. And I gotta say too, it was cold as heck in there
Yeah.
because we couldn't have heat going in the house because of the sound. So we had a space heater aimed at Brandi because she's literally like in a chain. And you know, she could get out whenever she wants, but she's like, you know, she's chained to a wall and has to sit by a mattress for lighting purposes. And so literally every time we call cut, we had a production assistant throwing blankets on top of her and shooting a heater at her because she's wearing a tank top and shorts. And,
Right.
you know, and we've got, you know, like I said, we had a production assistant just assigned to her to like make sure she stays warm. And then she's like trying to warm up while hair and makeup's going over there and resetting her look. And
Mm.
which you know, poor Brandi was such a trooper that entire time because that was not an easy task, and she was shivering because she has. I don't think she has an ounce of fat on her to keep her warm because she is in such good shape and incredibly talented and good looking. And I'm over here like sweating in this freezing cold basement. So yeah, I commend her over and over again. Don't tell her that. I don't want her to think I'm complimenting her or anything.
Okay, no, I'll edit.
Yeah,
I'll
you wouldn't
edit
want
that
that.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that Christina's set design ended up just being incredible. What's funny, the only piece of set design that like she didn't bring in that I just absolutely loved was that trellis that's sitting right by
Yeah.
Brandi. That was actually just a part of the basement,
Okay.
and so we decided to shoot a little bit of light through it just to add some texture.
Yeah.
Um, and it just worked beautifully. And it's funny because most of that scene just takes place in that, or most of the movie takes place in that one little corner of the basement
Yeah.
next to the water heater.
Yeah.
And it's much smaller than it looks on camera too.
Yeah.
We were shooting pretty wide in a lot of scenes or a lot of shots to make it feel bigger.
Right.
Because it was very cramped. The other hard part was the fight scene, or the little bit of the wrestling back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that small of a space was difficult for our fight choreographer to work with.
Well, it all worked very, very well. It worked very, very well. And I feel like the more I review films, the harsher I get on them because I've seen more, and you have more to compare to, and it's just this is wonderful. So you guys should be you guys should just be very proud of this.
I am very proud of it.
Yeah, good.
I'm
Good.
very excited by it in general. And
Yeah. And then you obviously you're credited with 4 different roles in this film, and that's a lot to manage. And it's not oftentimes that someone is part of production and pre-production and post-production. So what's it like? You bring this to life in every sense of that. What's that like being part of the process from start to finish, and just in a multitude of ways?
Man, that's a great question. So I would say like number one, it's the advantage of. So have you heard the term "a movie gets made 3 times"?
Yeah.
It's written once, with the script. It's written again when you start making it, and it's written again when you start editing it. And I think the biggest difference is that because I'm the writer, the director, and then I usually do the first edit myself, or I'll bring in an editor to assemble stuff, and then I'll work with them directly. It means that I get to make those executive changes myself.
Right.
So I'm not interpreting someone else's idea or story. So if I make an improvisation or a change in the story while we're shooting, I don't have to worry about contextualizing that or offending a screenwriter, is because I am a screenwriter and I see in the moment that this isn't working. What I had at its core wasn't working, or just this little aspect wasn't a piece of dialogue or a little story beat wasn't working. Then I can look at it and be like, hey, but this change could still work at its core with the story.
Yeah.
So it helps me manage the story a little easier, because I think there's a lot more stress when I'm adapting somebody else's work versus when I'm directing my own. I feel a bigger sense of responsibility to make sure that writer's voice is heard.
Yeah.
As where I can be a little more flexible with my own story to make sure I get to the core of it.
Yeah.
Because I tell people all the time, anytime I talk to young filmmakers, I'm like, as a director, people don't realize that your biggest job is, number one, to be a good communicator, but that's just the core of what you're supposed to be doing, with your crew. But like, your biggest task is to be the keeper of the story. Your job is to make sure the story makes sense from beginning to end. Yeah. And then you're supposed to communicate that with all your department heads and your actors to get the most out of it. And I think that's the easiest part, is when I'm involved in all when I'm involved in all the parts of the process, I can improvise and get from point A to point B to point C cohesively, very easily.
Very, very cool. And I imagine, just in general, kind of to say what you said, but you feel like you have more freedom to do what you want to do, which I imagine has to be very nice. So
it's wonderful. It's wonderful to not feel like I'm ticking off somebody in that way. However, I will say it is 1,000 times more stressful, because it takes up a big portion of your life. When I'm directing somebody else's stuff, I can hop in and I just direct, and then I might give feedback on the edit, but I'm not the one editing, or I'm not the
Mm,
one, screenwriting. So it takes a far smaller amount of my time
yeah.
compared to, taking on a project like this. 0% took up all of my February entirely, and it was hard to do it all in 1 month.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And then you sort of touched on it earlier where you said you don't really like to spoon feed your viewers. You want them to think this out and have multiple things to think about. So, and it very much is a film like find the deeper meaning, find out how it like what it means to you. And I don't think there's really, I mean, it's art. There's no wrong answer to the person
Yeah.
interpreting it. You may not understand it the way that that you were writing it or directing it, but if it means that to you, that's still okay. So I'm curious, as a writer and director, what is the one thing that you would like people to take away from 0%?
Oh man, um, that's a tough question. So I'd say the one thing I want them to take away from it is, number one, that nobody is beyond evil.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean, like, that's not supposed to be ominous, like fear everybody, but in reality, I think it's about kind of being willing. Number one, don't be afraid to try to overcome something.
Yeah,
But number two, be careful of who you trust and put your trust in.
sure.
And then I would say too, this is what I would say to any of my Christian brothers and sisters, is that I would say it's, don't just put your trust in a man,
Mm-hmm.
put your trust in the Lord. Um, and I think that's really where I'm coming
Mm-hmm.
at it from. Because it had been a while since I'd done something this dark,
Yeah,
so I think it was, it's kind of hard to say, like, hey, I want you to take away a lot from this dark story.
yeah.
But I'd say the biggest takeaways is just don't trust everybody,
Wonderful.
just because of they're in a position of power.
Right. Um, and then, like I said, I absolutely love this film. It seemed like you got a great reception at Winterfest. You won a ton of awards. Again, very well deserved. But where can everyone watch this film now?
So right now, I think you can find the film on
Okay.
thinkshorts.com. They're hosting at the moment. It is currently making its way through the festival circuit. It just won a festival. Where was that? It was Hilliard in Hilliard, Ohio.
Okay.
It was the first annual Hilliard Film Festival, and it just won the whole thing, which was cool.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That was like just a few weeks after the winter film premieres back in May, and then it is next going to play on July 16th, along with a bunch of other films from local filmmakers in Middletown, Ohio,
Mhm.
at Cinema 10 for the All American Filmmaker Showcase.
Okay.
If you look it up, there are tickets still available.
Awesome.
It'll be there. Other than that, once it goes through its festival circuit, you can find it on YouTube and Vimeo and stuff like that. It usually takes about a year to get through the whole festival circuit,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I think you can find it on Think Shorts right now pretty easily.
Wonderful. And then what are you working on now, if anything?
I just finished post production on a short film called Ground Rules for Living with Your Ex.
Okay.
It was written by my friend Jared Pettit and his friend Adam. Adam Radford. I had to think of his name for a minute. And it is a kind of a proof of concept short film for a feature.
Okay.
It's a kind of dramatic comedy about a couple that breaks up but has to figure out how to still live together, because they're both too selfish to move out.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fun little project. And then I'm working on a couple scripts for potential features that I'm trying to
Nice.
get funded, including exploring the possibility of a feature version of 0%. So
That would be fantastic.
I think there's a lot of routes I could go with it. It's just
Yeah.
making sure I find the right one.
Yes.
So I've been talking that over with my producer, even bringing her into the writing room a little bit to see if we can make something of it that
Awesome.
wouldn't that would still let 0% stand alone as its own short, but bring the root ideas into something a little bigger.
Okay. Well, best of luck with all of those things. Please keep me
Thank
in the
you.
loop. I would love to watch whatever comes out next and everything else. So, I'm looking forward to those, and I hope that 0% ends up being a feature, because like I've said it about a million times. I hope I'm not beating a dead horse. I hope that people are just getting the point, you know, by now. It's just a wonderful film. So to be able to
Thank you
expand
so
on,
much, man.
just to be able to expand on it would be so exciting. Um, and then before I let you go, I just have one more question for you. What are some of your favorite films?
Oh man, that you ask a filmmaker their favorite films. That's the
I know,
hardest question in the
I
world.
know.
Um, I would say my all-time favorite film is the Lord of the Rings trilogy as a whole because I
Okay.
consider it one 12-hour movie. The extended
Hmm.
editions is the way to watch it. A couple of my other favorites. I absolutely adore "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou."
Okay.
I'm just a big Coen Brothers fan. I love The Sixth Sense. I'm a big M Night fan,
Mm,
particularly early M Night, but I can still see some value in some of his mid stuff that
yeah.
is pretty bad. And then I love Damien Chazelle, so I like Whiplash, La La Land. I even didn't completely hate Babylon.
Okay.
Um, and then my guilty pleasure like movie is I'm a massive baseball fan, so
Okay.
I love baseball movies. I think baseball is the best sport to make movies about. Field of Dreams is probably my favorite baseball movie.
Okay.
And then Moneyball. I love Moneyball
Very,
and The
very cool.
Sandlot.
Yeah, I can't leave the Sandlot out.
Yeah, The Sandlot's amazing. So yeah, I have a lot, those are probably the most influential like ranges of movies, and it's kind of a broad range because I just love filmmaking
Yep.
and I love the stories people can tell with it.
It's a very difficult question, and that's why I love it so much. Um, but I'm making a list of all the films that people are naming, and believe it or not, I haven't seen most of those. So
Okay,
a lot of
really
those are now on the list. Yeah. So
awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, start with "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou." If you've never seen it, it's amazing.
that's one of them I
Um,
haven't seen. So
yeah, that's such a good Coen Brothers film.
very, very cool. Again, Joe, thank you so much for spending some time with me talking about 0%. And again, best of luck to everything going forward.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
You are more than welcome. You have a fantastic day.
You too.
See ya.